Well, that was Hugh Masekela's favorite piece, by the way. The legendary musician would have turned 80 yesterday, and those whose lives he touched shared fond memories.
I had a wonderful life with my brother, all throughout. Of course, he irritated me a lot, you know, frequently, but most of the time we had a great time. I miss him very much, mostly because we were always competing to tell the best jokes, you know, possible, since we were kids.
We as young people, we learn from people like Hugh. We've learned a lot, so that's beautiful, you know. Just the gift of music is just amazing.
And Hugh, as he was affectionately known, loved to develop young talent and nurtured many aspirant musicians along the way. Now he's being immortalized through a scholarship for 6 young South Africans to go to the famed Manhattan School of Music. And tonight I'm joined by Josh Jojo, his former friend and manager, who is also the Hugh Masekela Foundation board member. Josh, pleasure to have you with us here.
Pleasure to be here, man.
And watching that story from Sis Barbara talking about her brother and the jokes and competing about who could tell the better joke.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the jokes in Cape Town, remember? When
Non-stop.
Non-stop and laughter all the way.
All the way. I mean, that's amongst many abiding memories that people have of Hugh, and in my own personal experience, was his laughter and his ability to put people at ease with a joke. I mean, he had a razor-sharp wit, as you well know, and he loved to laugh. It was almost like a daily prerequisite, is up there with breathing and drinking water and having a healthy existence. He always used to say to people, make sure you laugh.
Yeah.
Make sure you laugh at least once a day, even if you sit by yourself and think of something funny, because
I found that very strange, that where does he find all this laughter and the jokes and the humor from? Because, you know, when you remember, you spend more time with him, traveling with him, right? But in my case, I almost remember, I think I remember every encounter, every time I've spent with him. And each of those encounters, they're filled with laughter. And I can tell the jokes from those moments.
Exactly. I mean, he had that effect on people, Tim, in the sense that if you met him once, even if it was a fleeting moment, whether it was someone like yourself who got to know him over the years and developed a friendship, or a fan that would maybe meet him backstage after a show or in a shopping center, and I would run into those people years later, and they would say, I remember meeting you with Hugh that one day, and he wore this, and he said this, and he did this, and it's very vividly captured in their memory, because he had the human touch as well. He didn't, you know, he never turned anyone down in the sense that he was too busy or too high and mighty. He had the ability to connect with people and always find something to affect them personally, which is exactly what you said. You remember those little moments like perfect snapshots in time.
Absolutely. And a nice touch on the part of Google yesterday to go out with that doodle.
Amazing, amazing. They approached us a couple of weeks ago and they said, we're thinking of doing this thing, the Google Doodle, and you know, would we give them the permission or could we consent? We were like, that would be a big, beautiful honor. And it's amazing that yesterday, millions and millions of people around the world who'd never heard of Hugh before, had no inkling of who he was and what he stood for and what he did, were suddenly getting a history lesson right there, because I'm sure so many people went back to say, well, who is this man that has sort of connected the dots and connected the world yesterday? It was a beautiful touch. It was really, we were honored to work with
a worldly person, widely traveled, but always kept his roots here in South Africa. Well, you went on so many travels with him.
I was blessed.
Yeah. You were.
I was blessed.
Definitely.
I've no doubt about that. I still today think about places he took me, and the band and the traveling party that was always on the road with him. But I was particularly blessed in that on solo missions, if he was going to do a talk somewhere or he was going to do a master class somewhere, I was privileged to travel with him as well. And again, the reverence that he was shown wherever he went in the world, and I'm talking from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil to Tokyo, any country in Europe, and especially in Africa. I mean, that was always his passion. And he was a Pan-African. There was not one country that he couldn't arrive in, and within 5 minutes of us checking into the hotel, whether we were in Kenya or in Nigeria or in the Congo or in Morocco, where people would arrive. Cameroon, I remembered meeting so many amazing people that he hadn't been there for something like 15 years. And so many people turned up at the hotel just to reconnect with him. And repeat visits as well, where he would make friends with the driver, for example, or a chaperone, and make them feel very much part of his inner circle. And, you know, he left a stamp on all these people.
And best South African export, very rooted here. What was it all about? I mean, his love for the continent, most definitely, but his identity as a South African.
Absolutely. As a South African, first and foremost, and on a bigger scale as an African, you know, he considered his last album, which was a very important work as it now stands as his last testament, was called No Borders. And it was a passion of his, and it's why he was so driven to form the Hugh Masekela Heritage Foundation, because he knew that it would preserve his legacy and continue for generations to come, this preservation of African culture, of identity, of heritage, stuff that he instilled in me. He showed me Africa. I was, again, privileged and blessed to travel to countries where presidents would be lining up to meet him. And it was in his DNA. He was a true African, and he made sure that people knew that. You know, there's a saying he always used to say to people when they would meet him for the first time, especially in that kind of fan moment where people seemed a little awkward, and the first thing they could say to him was, "Oh, bro, Hugh, we really love your music." And almost without fail, his immediate answer was, "Hey, man, it's not my music. I just found it here." And, you know, as best as I can interpret that gravelly voice. And you know, you see people do a double take, and then it would sink in what he was actually saying,
Sure.
that it wasn't his music. It was traditional music. It was music he heard in his childhood, music he heard on the gramophone, music he heard from the yard next to it.
Interpreted it.
Absorbed
Now, the
it
work
all.
of the Heritage Foundation, I know there are these scholarships, but what have you been up to as the foundation anyway, up to this point?
We started the foundation in 2015. It was founded in 2015. The overriding or the overarching mission statement, if I can call it that, is to preserve, protect, and develop African culture, heritage, and identity. Bro Hugh was obsessed with showing the world the beauty of Africa and the rich heritage that's here, the music, the dance, the folk tales, the pageantry of the costumes, very much rooted in cultural expression. So he wants us to continue the legacy where we can inspire intergenerational conversations. He was very concerned that the younger generation of South Africans and Africans were being a little too westernized, Western-looking, influenced by particularly American culture in the music scene. And he wanted them to sprinkle a little bit of what's here into their lives. So it's, you know, keeping rooted to their mother tongue, keeping rooted to the heritage of where their ancestors come from, knowing the folk tales of the region. And he was passionate about it, and we continue to be passionate about it in the foundation. We've got a great team, a group of individuals who are close to Bra Hugh. The chairperson is Professor Louis Mulamo, who's a great intellectual, and also, like Bra Hugh, is very driven by Hugh's passion.
But tell me about the scholarship then. How would the young musicians qualify for this scholarship to Manhattan?
They need to be great.
Yeah?
But I'm also simplifying it just to touch base a little bit on how it came about. And
Yes.
It was announced yesterday on the 4th of April in New York in association with the Elmer Music Foundation, who have partnered with us. It's a grant for 6 young, talented South African students, school leavers, students. It's an undergraduate course to study a Bachelor of Music degree at the Manhattan School of Music, which, as you know, is where Hugh learned his chops. It's his alma mater. Great musicians have come out of the Manhattan School of Music. Herbie Hancock graduated from there. Ron Carter, Max Roach, interesting group of Larry Willis was there with Hugh, Uncle Jonas Kwangwa as well had studied there. But the grant is to continue in Hugh's footsteps.
Yeah.
Excellent South African musicians, not necessarily rooted in jazz. As you know, Hugh was uncomfortable with the label of being just a jazz musician.
I felt that too, that he was an eclectic musician, played music.
He played music.
That's it, yeah.
He played African music.
Yeah.
And he sometimes was a little bit kind of dismissive of just being called a jazz musician.
We'll get the details of where those who are interested can apply if they have to, because Stanley from Kwakwa wants to share his own memories about Hugh. Stanley? Stan?
Good evening, team. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome, Stanley.
I'm fine, thanks, for team.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and also good evening to your guest.
Yeah, Josh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, you know, I have fond memories of Hugh. I actually come from Kokwa, but I own a record label in Johannesburg. And Hugh wanted to mentor my record label so that it's world status and I can be able to also get some opportunities for the artists that are signed under my label. I remember the last trip he made to Germany, I actually took him to the airport because that was the meeting that we were having, where he was introducing me to his management in order to
Stan,
mentor. Yes.
Thanks that we managed to put you through, because we're pressed for time. I have to give Josh this last opportunity to give us the contact details for those who want to go to the Manhattan School of Music.
Okay, thanks for that, Tim, and thanks, Stan. Is basically the application process only opens from the 1st of September.
Okay.
And it's for a graduate study that, or the semester that starts next year, 2020, in August.
Yeah.
So from the 1st of September to the 1st of December, there's a 3-month application period. Look, we'll farm out more information closer to the time, but if you go to the Manhattan School of Music website, there's a little button that says apply.msmnyc.edu, and they'll lead you to the promised land.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Great to see you.
Got an opportunity to catch up with you. And that's our show for tonight. Join me tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, and we'll be talking to Peter Louis Myberg about his new book on Ace Magashule. Professor Nhlechana will be analyzing the ANC, and Dr. Padile Hotra is also featured. From us, good night.